So as some of you all are aware, I have lately been playing a bunch of Wuthering Waves over on Twitch, and at this point have cleared all the bosses in the game. And lately, with the help of my Discord mods, I've been fortuitously theory crafting the power levels of the current characters in this game. So while like all tier lists, this is just my opinion, as an ex-Genshin Impact pro who is experienced in applied statistics, I think it's quite apparent that my opinion holds a lot of weight and value. Not to mention, my previous tier lists I've made for other games have a good track record at being so on point that there hasn't been a need to update them. Basically, what I'm saying is that I'm a badass and I make high quality tier lists. Anyways, this Wuthering Waves tier list I'll show will be biased towards the characters being fully built and doing more endgame content. So you may see some other tier lists pop up in the coming days that look way different because the player base will be in the early game, but I assure you over time the tier list will morph to look more like the one I'm going to show you here. This is what happened most recently with my Fire Emblem Engage tier list, and it's gonna happen in this game as well. So first we have Yinlin, and she basically controls puppets on these strings, which is pretty cool. And she hits super hard, actually has the most basic attack damage in the game. Unfortunately, I find that it's just really hard to judge the effective range of her attacks. Like sometimes her attacks stretch really far and sometimes they don't, and overall I just found myself whiffing multiple combos with her. So because of that, I just have to put her in D tier. Maybe if you're really good she can move up to C tier, but for the average gamer, she will for sure be in the bottom tier. Next, we got Bailian. So what Bailian does is summon a majestic sperm-like companion that she can thrust into enemies from distance and penetrate their defenses with. However, whilst engaging in this, Bailian herself is actually very vulnerable as only her summon attacks and not her. And I just found that enemies in this game tend to ignore the summon and aggro onto the main hero instead, so unfortunately I'm going to have to place Bailian into D tier. Next is Chixia, who is basically a copy-paste of the Gunslinger class from Lost Ark. She's a very high skill cap character with lots of combos that have high damage potential. The thing is, all of her combos like obnoxiously flinger across the screen, and I just found that I kept comboing out of range of the enemies, and I would annoyingly have to run back in range to restart a combo. So while by my Excel calculations her theoretical DPS is very high, in practice it is much lower. That said, she is still very good, and I would say very deserving in a placement of C tier. Okay, now on to Jiyan, who basically plays like Zhao from Genshin Impact, except you aren't allowed to plunge attack. And if you ever played Zhao from Genshin, you would know the Caesar-inducing plunge attack gameplay is how you get the most DPS with the character. So since Jiyan can't really do that, he's just kind of a worse version of Zhao, and because of that, I just have to place him in D tier. Alright, now onto the two lolly characters who both play the same, they're just visually different to appeal to a wider demographic of the avid lolly fandom. Now neither of these characters require much skill to be effective at, as you don't need to worry about parrying or dodging or combos, and you really just spam charge attacks from range and win the game. So they really aren't too mentally challenging to play, but like I said, they're designed to be played by lolly aficionados. But for the rest of us, I would just ignore them, as even though they are very low skill ceiling units, their potential is very lackluster in endgame content. And honestly, I will find it amusing when everyone is thinking these characters are super OP initially, but then over time will come to the realization that they are just D tier units. Next, we got Yangyang, who I like quite a lot and find her very fun to play. She is just a very powerful and satisfying to use AoE attacker that absolutely shreds groups of enemies. And while I really want to put her into B tier, unfortunately a lot of content in this game is single boss battles, so I can't in good faith put Yangyang higher than C tier, as I feel I would just be doing a massive disservice to my audience if I did that. I forgot what Danjin even does, so she's probably garbage and I'm gonna put her into D tier. Next, we got Taoqi, who is absolutely brilliant. She's got amazing AoE, amazing single target, and a devastating parry attack. And basically, with the right skill build and items, you can easily one-shot every boss in the game so far with Taoqi. She's just fantastic, and honestly, I can't think of any downsides. Truly sits at a tier of her own over at B tier. I just don't like Yuanwu, so I'm going to place him in D tier. And next we have Sanhua, who is kinda like Yangyang, but significantly higher skill cap. Now, you might think this makes her superior to Yangyang, but I just found that she was way too hard to play. It's kinda like how in Smash Bros. Lucina is far better than Marth, even at competitive play. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to put Sanhua into a tier below Yangyang into D tier. Next is Aalto, and he's basically just a worse version of Chixia. Like, he is more mobile than Chixia, but there really isn't any content in the game that requires that, and in general, you would just rather have Chixia's higher damage. Like, if you want to farm Reddit karma, you may like him for posting flashy gameplay and whatnot, but for those of us who want powerful characters, unfortunately, he is just an obvious D tier unit. Next are the main characters who you get for free, so they are garbage. I will put the female below because she is uglier. And last, and I wish I could say not least, but unfortunately is the least because my god, Mortefi is atrociously bad and quite frankly, by my estimations, account ruining. Like honestly, I think I'm going to have to add another tier below D tier just for Mortefi. He's just a hybrid magic and physical unit, which leads to him excelling at absolutely nothing. Hybrid units are the bane of my existence in video games.